burst into applause. The recent investigation found information in FBI files that the Nation of Islam has been calling for the reopening of about witnesses who could not identify Thomas 15X Johnson and Norman 3X Butler, and implicated other suspects, according to the District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. The files reveal that the late FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover ordered agents to tell witnesses regarding the Malcolm X assassination not to reveal that they were informants when talking with police and prosecutors. He said, quote, "I apologize for what were serious, unacceptable violations of law and the public trust. There is one ultimate conclusion. Mr. Aziz and Mr. Islam were wrongfully convicted of this crime." Again, the Nation of Islam has been saying this since the 1970s. In fact, since the 1960s. It took 2021 for the American courts to come out and say these men were wrongfully convicted of this crime. The co-founder of the Innocence Project, Barry Scheck, also condemned the wrongful conviction, saying the damage done to them and their families is immeasurable. Had exculpatory evidence been made public, it would have changed the history of the civil rights movement in this country, he added. Now, Malcolm X was an icon. He was the national representative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He was a direct student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and a spokesman for him. And he had helped build the Nation of Islam and establish different branches of the organization across the United States. Of course, in November 1963, when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad instructed all of his ministers not to make any comments about the assassination, and Malcolm X did speak, he was suspended for 90 days initially, and then, as I'll go over with you, he held two press conferences on March the 8th and the 12th, 1964, explaining that his time was up, but there are agents coming, infiltrating his organization, his circles, as well as the Nation of Islam, and they were responsible for creating a rift. So he's still a follower and believer in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but he's going to start working on his own because of the agents. And then later on, of course, with the hard work of those trying to bring about conflict and contention and mischief and division and disunity between the leadership, that he eventually further pulled away. And then it became known that someone was trying to kill him. Now, Malcolm X landed in France in his last days, and he was refused entry into France because it came to Malcolm X's attention that there was an assassination plot against his life in France, and they did not want him killed on French soil. Malcolm X also in 1964 traveled to Egypt, and in Egypt he was food poisoned, and he had to go through a very extensive, uncomfortable medical procedure to pump out his entire stomach in order for him to survive. And Malcolm X came to the conclusion, and he started saying when he returned, that he knew that the Nation of Islam did not follow him to France, and that the Nation of Islam did not poison him in Egypt, and that this assassination plot seemed to be coming from so many more angles, some of these which were only discovered several years later. So on February 21st, 1965, Malcolm X was about to address 400 people at the Audubon Ballroom in Manhattan, New York, when there was a disturbance. And everyone, of course, is looking forward, focusing on Malcolm X. Someone in the back shouts out, "Nigger, get your hands out of my pocket." Everyone looks back, is distracted, someone throws a smoke bomb, and while everyone is looking that way, gunmen come down the aisle and carry out the assassination. Now, one man was picked up on the scene. His name was Talmadge Hayer. None of the other men were picked up on the scene, and two men, members of the Nation of Islam, were later arrested. Thomas 15X Johnson, Norman 3X Butler. Now, let's look at some facts. Members of Malcolm X's organization later testified that if those men, Butler and Johnson, now Khalil Islam and Aziz, if they were present at the Audubon Ballroom on that day, we would have definitely recognized them because we were all colleagues. But they were not there. The one person that they did arrest on the scene, Talmadge Hare, confessed, yes, I did it, he said. He said, but these other two men here, they're not part of this. And then when they asked him, okay, well, if these two other individuals were not part of it, then who were the other assailants with you? And he never revealed their names until 12 years later in 1977. Some other factors to focus on, though, regarding the assassination of Malcolm X. One, there were a number of other individuals, both inside and outside the venue where Malcolm X was assassinated on the day, that were never even discussed. Two, everywhere where Malcolm X spoke, there was a search procedure before he spoke to ensure that no one brought in any weapons. But on that day, the guards at the front door were instructed to not have a search procedure. What are the odds that the one day that they have no search procedure, that these men bring in all these high-powered weapons into the Audubon Ballroom that Malcolm X ended up being shot with 21 times? Who was it who had the influence and authority within Malcolm X's circle to tell the guards at the door, do not have a search procedure today? Also, it was noticed in the accounts of the secretary of Malcolm X and others that when they arrived to the venue, the seating arrangement was different. Instead of a center aisle coming down the middle, there was a bulk of chairs in the center and two side aisles, which the gunmen subsequently used to run down the aisle on either side and shoot Malcolm X 21 times. And then fourth, the Audubon Ballroom, the venue of the assassination, was rented out the night before, February 20th, 1965. But there was no venue, there was no event there. So they say 5 shooters were involved. But we have to ask, well, who were the people who had influence by the door to stop them from doing the search procedure? Who were the people who had influence over the setting up of the chairs to remove the center aisle and have the two side aisles where the gunmen used? Who were the people who rented out the Audubon Ballroom the night before? And so many of these questions remained unanswered. According to Bruce Perry, 1989, in Malcolm X, The Last Speeches, on February 23rd, James Farmer, the leader of the Congress of Racial Equality, announced at a news conference that it was local drug dealers and not the Nation of Islam who were to blame for the murder of Malcolm X. Others accused the New York Police Department, the FBI or the CIA, citing the lack of police protection, the ease with which the assassins entered the ballroom, and the failure of the police to preserve the crime scene. Dr. Manning Marable, who has done one of the most comprehensive bodies of research on the assassination of Malcolm X, in A Life of Reinvention, he explores the fact that Malcolm X was not fully aware of the extent of undercover law enforcement that were in his presence on that day. Of course, he would not have known until he actually passed away. In his own autobiography, written by Alex Haley, it says he wasn't fully aware of the degree to which the federal and state law enforcement agencies were surveilling him. Malcolm X did not know the degree to which his organization, as well as the Nation of Islam, had been infiltrated by agents and informants. Dr. Marable's research uncovers the fact that as early as the 1950s, Malcolm X was helping the Honorable Elijah Muhammad establish temples of the Nation of Islam around the country, and Boston was a city he helped set up a meeting place in a private home. Now listen to this. The FBI files noted that Malcolm X, this is January 1954, one full year before the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan even joined the Nation of Islam, that Malcolm X had a meeting in a private residence that had between 10 and 12 people in attendance. And among that small group of 10 or 12, one of them in attendance was an FBI informant. Undercover agents and informants also infiltrated Muslim Mosque Incorporated and the Organization of Afro-American Unity, the two groups that Malcolm X formed after his split with the Nation of Islam. Now, this only gets deeper. And think, the man who gave Malcolm X mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on the ground when he was dying, bleeding from the gunshot wounds, a man named Gene Roberts, was an informant for the FBI. And the funny thing about it is, after Malcolm X was assassinated and Gene Roberts was there trying to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, after the whole Malcolm X saga, he went and joined the Black Panthers. And in the Black Panthers, he continued his role as an informant for the FBI. There's an interview with Gene Roberts on YouTube. You can take a look at it. He's openly testifying everything. Dr. Marable says Mr. Roberts' first assignment was to infiltrate the Muslim Mosque Incorporated. And in the 1970s, the public finally learned about COINTELPRO, Counterintelligence Program, and other secret FBI programs established to infiltrate and disrupt civil rights organizations during the 1950s and the 1960s. Now, there's a recent film called Judas and the Black Messiah, with two of the stars, or one of the stars from the Black Panther movie. And in it, it looks at the life of Fred Hampton, who was the head of the Black Panthers chapter in the city of Chicago. Fred Hampton was 22 years old. He was executed by the police along with Mark Clark and about 10 others. Now, the film shows you the true story of a man who is a car thief. It starts off looking at this car thief. And this man is stealing a car. He steals another. He's stealing cars. And the police and the FBI, they're watching him. They're not interested in protecting the property like Kyle Rittenhouse. We're going to get to that. Trust me, we're going to get to that. They letting him steal the cars. And then they catch him. And say, well, look, we have evidence of you committing this crime. We have evidence of you committing that crime. We have evidence of you stealing this car. We have evidence of you stealing that car. You are looking at almost a full lifetime in prison. But you don't have to go to prison. You can do something for us, and we will let you off. What do I have to do to avoid going to prison? They say to him, we want you to join the Black Panthers. And we want you to become friends with Fred Hampton. We want you to get close with him and give us information. And it was from the information of that informant planted by the American law enforcement authorities that they got information on where Fred Hampton was the night that they came in and executed him in his bed. Now, it may not have been the specific mission of the informant to assassinate Fred Hampton, but definitely to play a key role. Because sometimes the only way we can fall is when we betray each other.